Let's finish up this series on 15 and 290. We've got to the point where we know that you can just, to test whether a quadratic form is universal, positive definite integer matrix quadratic form, to see if it's universal, you just check your form through n equals 15. Well, in fact, you can even sharpen it up a little bit. There's actually a magic list that you just have to check these critical numbers. So for any quadratic form you want, as long as it's from an integer matrix, so the cross terms have even coefficients, you just have to make sure that you can make 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 10, 14, and 15 out of that form. If you can, then it's guaranteed that you can make every other number, no matter how big. That's pretty cool. That you can't get any weird counterexamples cropping up in the millions or billions or trillions as long as you've checked these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 numbers. Not too bad. One wonders, can the list be improved? Are they all really critical to check? Maybe if you have a form that works on everything but 14, it automatically gives 14. It can't just fail on 14. Well, in fact, what they did, what Conway and Schneeberger did, was find a form that fails only on one of these numbers, one of these magic numbers. So they really are critical. So it's about as sharp as you can get, about as tight a result as you can get. Now, just to finish up, what about if we don't restrict to forms with an integer matrix? I've referred very vaguely to the fact that forms like this really are perfectly good, and you shouldn't exclude them just because they don't have an even coefficient here. This would be something that does not come from an integer matrix. Well, Conway conjectured what would happen in that case, and he conjectured, partly based on computer checks, that you'd have to check up to 290, and that there'd be a new magic list to be the magic list we had already, plus we have a 13 coming in, interestingly enough, and then a bunch of bigger numbers, all the way up to 290. Well, it took a few years, and it was some other people who proved it, but Bargava and Hanke came along in 2005 and proved this. So it's not quite as sharp. It's not easy to, this one, it's actually pretty easy to memorize the critical list. Just carry it around with you. This one, it's a bit more work to memorize the list and have it in your head, but it's still a very, very big result because, again, the weird, there's no possibility that some weird form could have some minimal counterexample, some minimal number that it can't create, be in the millions or billions, at most 290. One of the pieces of terminology, one of the terms that they used was the truant, which is the minimal counterexample. If you have a non-universal form, something that can't represent all numbers, the truant is the smallest number it can't represent. And so here it is. Here's a good example. This is something where the smallest number it can't represent is 290. So this does show, again, that you actually really have to check up that far. This will produce every single number. If you want to do it by hand, I guess that'd be an interesting thing to check if you have a lot of spare time. Try to figure out how to create every number between 1 and 289 with this form, and then discover that no matter how hard you try, you can't get 290. Notice the minuses here. Remember, that is legal as long as you check that it's really positive definite according to the real definition, which is that if I put in any numbers in here, any integers in here, it won't produce an actual negative output, despite the presence of negatives in the formula. So that's why 15 and 290 are cool, because they have this wonderful relevance for quadratic forms, and these results are very, very recent. These are things that could have been asked, and probably were asked in some form, in the time of Gauss and Lagrange and Legendre 200 plus years ago, but only recently have people figured out. I won't say anything really much about how they did the work, mostly because I don't know. But I do know it's a combination of pure mathematics techniques with a certain amount of careful computer calculations. There are lists of thousands of forms that were generated, especially in the process of doing this, and sort of winnowed down using some very sophisticated pure mathematical techniques to figure out that this was the magic list.